My name is Paulette Velez and I will talk about the final analysis of a trial of the M72 AS01E vaccine to prevent tuberculosis. Definition: it is a bacterial infection caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis. The bacterium usually attacks the lungs but can also damage other parts of the body. Tuberculosis is expressed through the air when a person with pulmonary tuberculosis coughs, sneezes, or speaks.
According to the World Health Organization, about 1/3 of the world's population, or about 2.3 billion people, have latent tuberculosis, a potentially fatal bacterial infection which most often affects the lungs. So what is tuberculosis? Tuberculosis, or TB, is a potentially serious bacterial infection that mainly affects the lungs. TB spreads through droplets in the air from coughs and sneezes. Many strains of TB are drug-resistant. There are two types of TB, latent and active. Latent TB is a condition in which you have a TB infection, but the bacteria remains in your body in an inactive state. Latent TB isn't contagious, but it can turn into active TB. Treatment is very important with latent TB to control the spread of the virus. Active TB is the condition that makes you sick and can spread to others. Symptoms of TB include coughing that lasts 3 or more weeks, coughing up blood, chest pain or pain with breathing and coughing, unintentional weight loss, fever, fatigue, and more. According to the Mayo Clinic, to treat tuberculosis, you must take antibiotics for at least 6 to 9 months. The exact drugs and length of treatment depend on your age, overall health, possible drug resistance, the form of TB, either latent or active, and the infection's location in the body.
Application in medicine. The vaccine contains a recombinant functional protein derived from the two Mycobacterium tuberculosis antigens MTB32A and MTB39A, combined with the AS01E adjuvant system that helps prevent tuberculosis.
Mycobacterium tuberculosis is the leading infectious cause of death worldwide, and latent TB infection affects an estimated 1/4 of the world's population. Adults with latent TB run the risk of developing active TB infection. A vaccine for persons with latent TB that prevents TB activation could help interrupt disease transmission and improve disease control. The M72 vaccine contains a recombinant fusion protein derived from two immunogenic TB antigens, combined with an adjuvant. The goal of vaccination is to induce a protective immune response against TB, thus preventing active TB disease. This randomized controlled Phase 2b trial in Kenya, South Africa, and Zambia enrolled about 3,500 HIV-negative adults, 18 to 50 years old, who were healthy or with stable chronic medical conditions, and who had confirmed latent pulmonary TB infection by interferon gamma release assay, but were sputum sample negative for TB by PCR. Participants were randomized to receive 2 doses of either M72 vaccine or placebo intramuscularly 1 month apart. The majority of participants had previously received the BCG vaccine. The primary endpoint was the incidence of bacteriologically confirmed active pulmonary TB. At a mean follow-up of about 2 years, there were 10 confirmed active pulmonary TB cases in the vaccinated group versus 22 cases in the placebo group, for a statistically significant vaccine efficacy of 54%. Serious adverse events, potential immune-mediated diseases, and death occurred with similar frequency in both groups. The authors conclude that the M72 vaccine significantly reduced the incidence of pulmonary TB in healthy HIV-negative and largely previously BCG vaccinated adults with latent TB. Full trial results are available at nejm.org.
Pros: providing approximately 50% protection against progress to the active pulmonary tuberculosis for 3 years in HIV-infected and HIV-negative adults with Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Cons: Vaccine efficacy is higher among participants 25 years of age or younger than among participants over 25 years of age.
Tuberculosis is an enormous global problem. If you look at statistics of a couple of years ago, roughly 2 million people died of TB. Now, it turns out that there is a very close bacterial relative of the human TB bacterium that causes fish tuberculosis. And when you look at the pathology of the disease, it looks very similar to what human TB bacteria cause in humans. In a disease like TB, you've got two players. You've got the bacterium and you've got the host. My dream would be to have a much deeper understanding yet of every trick that the bacterium uses to establish itself in the host and to produce disease. That's a black box. We use the zebrafish as a model organism. A friend of mine calls it the living laboratory. They're so cool. For the first 2 to 3 weeks, it's optically transparent. So we can follow the fate of individual cells and individual bacteria, see where they're going, see what they're actually doing. It sounds simple, but its power has been extraordinary. We found completely new ways in which we think that a certain form of resistance to the bacteria develops, a form of resistance that is called drug tolerance. And that has turned out to be quite a revelation. It is critically important that our animals be really treated wonderfully. There is no way that we could have made the discoveries that we've made without the fish.
In Civapliden in Ecuador. In our country, this vaccine is needed because there are a longer number of the people with this disease, and this vaccine will help reduce these numbers, especially in adults, which is the main effect in Ecuador.
The current BCG vaccine that's being used to prevent TB is not very effective, it's not very efficient, and there's a big issue with drug resistance in TB at the moment. So what we've done is we made a new TB vaccine by including in the vaccine a new adjuvant that stimulates the immune system, and it flags up the vaccine to the immune system, so you get a much better cellular and humoral immune response against the TB antigen. We can make a better vaccine, but it needs to be thermally stable so we can transport it to places where the vaccine is needed.
My name is AS01E. I'm a lecturer in chemistry at the University of Bath. A majority of the vaccines have to be kept refrigerated between 2 and 8 degrees. It's incredibly restrictive and very narrow temperature range, obviously. And in most of the countries around the world, when we want to transport them, if there is no electricity or if there is no fridge, it's impossible. But if we don't need refrigeration, if we will just use insufflation instead, then we will be able to bring those vaccines to people who need them in the remote countries. So insufflation is a new method where we apply an inorganic material, silica, to proteins, and we make sort of a network out of this inorganic material, and this network consists of very strong covalent bonds. So once we make this silica network around the proteins, it sort of keeps them intact, and it keeps them from unraveling and spoiling. In this study specifically, we looked at TB, potential TB vaccine, but in general we are also looking at other vaccines. So we've already looked at tetanus, we're doing diphtheria at the moment, potentially we're interested in doing pertussis, which would obviously cover the whole DTB vaccine, diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis. But also we think that this method will be applicable on many other vaccines in the future.
Conclusion: the efficacy of the M72 AS01E vaccine against pulmonary tuberculosis and the induced immune response were sustained for 3 years, but these results need confirmation in a larger and longer study conducted in a broader range of the population.
Well, the vaccine for tuberculosis, called BCG vaccine, is still the most widely used vaccine in the world. Actually, about 100 million people get it every year. We don't give it in the United States for two reasons. Mostly because we don't have enough TB to make it worthwhile to vaccinate the entire population. It's expensive and complicated to do that. But around the world, it's a very widely used vaccine. It clearly, no matter how much it works, and people argue about how well it works, it clearly doesn't work well enough because, as I said, it's the most widely used vaccine in the world, and TB is still the 8th leading cause of death, and TB cases around the world have not declined at all in a very long time. So we need a new vaccine for sure. Whether or not we should continue to use the one we use is an interesting question. It does protect children from severe forms of tuberculosis. That's its major efficacy. And it's probably worth doing in countries where TB is incredibly common. But certainly we're not going to eliminate TB with this vaccine. The bad news, though, is from everything that I can see, it'll be at least 20 years, and that might be an optimistic estimate, at least 20 years before there's a better vaccine that's available. I would say at the rate we're going, eradication of TB globally is not within sight. We just don't have the tools. It would probably take a really effective vaccine to do that. So I don't think anyone can really see eradication. I mean, frankly, at the moment, on a global level, we'd be happy just to see a decline. Now, in many regions of the world, TB cases are declining, and the place where it's going up the fastest is sub-Saharan Africa, where AIDS is really driving the whole epidemic. But in many other regions, TB cases are declining. But I don't think we can realistically talk about eradication for a long time.